and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux, and it doesn't matter much whether it's in the news or on your mind or close to your heart or getting up your nose or it's on your chest, whatever. Just remember you're not alone. There's enough out there for us to think about, some of which we will have a look at in a couple of moments. I think tomorrow, Peter Clayton is with me behind the camera. Pete, tomorrow we should have some pictures of the new radio studio.
Yes, we will.
This is quite miraculous. A radio station without the transmitter and without a lot of the infrastructure, paraphernalia, hoopla. It's quite an eye-opener for somebody of my generation to look at what can be done on a computer with a smartphone. Anyway, we'll show you some pictures tomorrow. Promise. Anyway, happy birthday if you're having a birthday. Happy wedding anniversary. It's July the 11th. The last model of Volkswagen's Beetle car is produced in Mexico, ending production worldwide, which went on for 80 years. That was one hell of a successful run, and you know what? They could still be making them today. But I guess it's the 12-year-old in the marketing department who says, no, they want something else. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. 2022, the new study suggests that dogs can see with their noses. What? See with their noses. Hey, Pete, can Katie do that?
Not that I know of.
Oh, well, I don't know. See with their noses. First documentation of a direct connection between the olfactory bulb and the vision lobe in any species. 2022. See with your nose. Could be useful. The US Patent Office says that Joseph Swan, rather than Thomas Edison, invented the electric light carbon for the incandescent lamp. They said this back in 1892. But I have never heard of Joseph Swan, and Thomas Edison is a very familiar name. 1916, Gough Whitlam, Australian politician, Prime Minister from 72 to 75. He was born in Kew in Melbourne. He died in 2014. Fabian Society bloke, socialist, idealist, I don't know what you'd call him. He certainly was a lightning rod for Australia for those years. Anyway, not my cup of tea, but there you go. 1976, singer and actor Frank Sinatra. He's 60. He weds for the fourth and final time the American socialite Barbara Marx, who was 45. Barbara was the wife of one of the Marx brothers. Which one was it now? I can't remember. But a very beautiful woman. Very beautiful woman. 1893, the first cultured pearl is obtained by Mikimoto in Japan. A cultured pearl. 1989, Laurence Olivier, English stage and screen acting great, Hamlet, Rebecca, dies at 82. But that was in 1989, yeah. Robert the Bruce, King of the Scots, from 1306 to 1329, national hero, born on this day in 1274. Robert the Bruce. In 1859, on this day, Big Ben's second and current bell chimes from inside the clock tower for the first time. That was in 1859. Kenny Rogers forms the first edition in 1967, which was the year I started working, not so much in radio, because I was working in radio from about 62, but that's when I went to the country to learn the techniques and the business of actually sitting behind a microphone and doing it. 1967. 1960, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, first published. 1960, George Gershwin, American composer, An American in Paris, Porgy and Bess, Summertime. He dies from a brain tumour at just 38 years of age. I had no idea George Gershwin was so young. 1937 was the year. Billionaire Richard Branson flies to the edge of space in his Virgin Galactic rocket plane in space tourism test. In 2021, I don't know what you'd have to do to get me on one of those things. Pete, would you be interested in going to the edge of space and paying $200,000? No, me neither. Yul Brynner, Russian Swiss, Tony and Academy Award-winning stage and screen actor, The King and I, The Ten Commandments. I loved him in The Magnificent Seven, but everything he did was fantastic. He was born in Russia. He died in 1985, but born in 1920. And I think one of the last things he did was a commercial to tell people not to smoke. And very, very, what would you call it, impactful. He said, if you're looking at this, I am telling you from the grave, do not smoke. And he died of lung cancer, but his legacy to the world, apart from all those wonderful films that he did, his legacy was to just tell people not to smoke. Don't put anything but clear, fresh air in your lungs. Reg Varney, English actor, on the buses, born in London, vaudeville and all-round entertainer, as those people in England at the time tended to be. He died in 2008, but born 1916. Anyway, if you remember the day for any reason at all, I hope it has been a great day. Happy, happy day. Speaking of entertainment, the flagship ABC current affairs program, Four Corners, devoted their program last night to gender dysphoria. Now, I decided to look that up. The basis for putting a whole program together. Anyway, the number of males who have gender dysphoria in Australia are 0.005% of the population. Females are 0.002% of the population. Now, can you believe that the national broadcaster would devote their major current affairs program, their flagship current affairs program, to what amounts to, what would you think? One person, let me think, one person in a million? Yeah, about one person in a million. And you can look this up, not hard to find. So we have the national broadcaster obsessed with the minutiae, and we have a federal government obsessed with the trivial. While we, in the real world, struggle with the real problems like the cost of electricity and the cost of living. At public expense, ladies and gentlemen, we are being taken for a ride. We are. Nonsense. It's, pardon me, 500 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. 500 days. God, it seems longer. But anyway, the US is preparing to send cluster bombs to support the war against Russia. It's a very difficult thing. Cluster bombs have been outlawed by, I think, 100 countries around the world. There are only a few. Australia is not one of them. But there are only a few countries who will allow them. But there are a few weapons as pernicious and as nasty as cluster bombs, because not all of them go off when they are fired or dropped. You have these little cluster bombs, or bomblets. And sometimes they just bury themselves, and years later they become a death trap for civilian populations. Cluster bombs have never succeeded. They've banned a few countries have banned them. anti-personnel mines, something else that I think we should ban, because long after the war is gone, people have to spend millions and millions of dollars to go around and find these blasted things and do something with them, because they will lurk and kill people. Anti-personnel mines do not always kill soldiers. They kill civilians. But I don't know. I mean, I can understand the Americans. They realise that they need to send ammunition. I think they should pull their finger out and send the F-16s and just get this thing done. There's a lot of lip service. Everyone is ho-humming and carrying on about it. But look, just send the Ukraine the hardware that they need to do the job. Why is there a highway to hell and only a stairway to heaven? A highway to hell and a stairway to heaven. It doesn't seem right, does it? But it does say a lot about the anticipated traffic, I suppose. I hope those butchers and bastards in Afghanistan find their way onto the highway to hell. Those 17 virgins there, old friends. You would have heard that not only have the Taliban banned girls and women from education and from work, even with the aid agencies, without whom everything in that horrible, war-torn, dusty, awful country would stop. Women have no human rights. But now they can't even have their hair done. Makeup. Perhaps one of the last pleasures available to them. Have you heard the United Nations say one word about this? They will lecture us on human rights at the drop of a hat. But for some strange reason, oh, I know, it's cultural. Afghanistan is cultural. Oh boy. The things you can get away with by saying it's cultural are just amazing. And speaking of the highway to hell, Taryn, that's an interesting spelling. I think it's Taryn. Taryn Brumfitt. It's a name you're not going to forget. She is the Australian of the Year, in case you have forgotten. A South Australian. Got there because of her work on body shaming. Body shaming. Australian of the Year, body shaming. Oh, well, it made sense to somebody, I suppose. Came out with this on the weekend. Doctors should not be allowed to comment on patients' weight. Now, I'm not quoting her directly, but I'm paraphrasing that. Doctors shouldn't be allowed to comment on a patient's weight. She may be Australian of the Year, but hell, I mean, what rubbish. You go to the doctor and the first thing he or she does is to put you on the scales and check your blood pressure. And in my case, she says, Jeremy, you're putting on weight. Listen, Taryn, that is her job. This is not fat shaming. This is not discrimination. This is a friendly word from your doctor. Heavens to Betsy. God. And speaking of health, ramping is getting worse. Patients spent nearly 4,000 hours. 4,000 hours in ambulances and waiting to be looked at in our big public hospitals. Close enough to a disgrace, I would think, ladies and gentlemen. Where I wonder are the ambulance protests that we saw at the last election. Do you remember when they basically used every ambulance in South Australia as a political billboard which said vote Labor because they're going to fix the problem? Not a comment from them, and not a comment from the media either. How can you be so vehemently against ramping 1 minute and then quite comfortable with it the next? Gee, it's amazing. The final robo-debt report has been handed to the Governor-General, was handed to him on Friday morning. 990 pages, I think, 3 volumes, 1 million documents. That Royal Commission cost millions and millions and millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars, when in actual fact anyone with half a brain would have realised that the whole robo-debt thing was wrong. It was scandalous, it was immoral, it was illegal. You do not need a Royal Commission to tell you that. It was a terrible mistake made by the previous government. Of course governments make mistakes, but this was a doozy. This was a big one. We shouldn't be surprised every time, I guess, we see a politician behaving like a politician. It's what they do. Labor has weaponised these Royal Commission findings, exploiting the moment for all it's worth. That's pretty natural, isn't it? Predictable. So apart from getting this report handed down, we now have the prospect that it was handed down in time to embarrass the opposition at the time of this by-election, this Fadden by-election. Well, I don't know. It could be right. I have no idea. The media will be in high dudgeon, bashing the Liberal Party generally, Scott Morrison in particular. I can bet there will not be any mention made of the scandalous behaviour of the Labor government when Tanya Plibersek was the Attorney General, well, not so many years ago, and was quite happily putting people in jail for Centrelink fraud, left, right and centre. Well, in truth, I don't know whether she was doing it happily or not. I don't know. But someone should have known better. There were people who committed suicide. There were people who had their reputations destroyed, all on the basis of a law that didn't even exist. I listened to the Prime Minister and Bill Shorten carrying on about Scott Morrison and how he should have taken responsibility for checking the law before implementing this robo-debt thing. Well, that's fair criticism. No argument. Maybe the Liberal Party don't remember the events that I am talking to you about now, which makes them pretty stupid. And perhaps the media doesn't remember either. Maybe? I've told you the story a couple of times. No one made a big thing of it. I think it was worse than robo-debt, if that's possible. The then Labor government were actually putting people in jail for Centrelink fraud, charged using a law that didn't exist. Look it up. I'll bet the media won't be looking up what I'm saying. Too embarrassing. There wasn't even an apology, you know, not an apology. There was certainly not a Royal Commission. And there were no resignations, no sackings. All they did was, in the dead of night, they changed the law to say what they had previously thought the law said. A retrospective change of the law to avoid being sued by all those tens and tens of thousands of people that the Labor government had hounded for years. Incompetent, wrong, scandalous, unjust. And no one would have known about any of this, except for the brilliant South Australian lawyer, Michael Abbott QC. Yes, robo-debt was wrong, but for God's sake, let's be fair. The previous Labor government got away with their welfare blunder, and as I say, probably worse than robo-debt. Anyone in the media remember what I'm talking about? It's only a few years ago. I guess not. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back tomorrow, and we'll have pictures of the new studio in which we will give them hell. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton and I wish you a very good day. Believe in yourself, and bye for now.